The morning began like any other, with streets bustling and coffee shops filling with the familiar rhythm of daily life, but an unusual tension seemed to hang in the air, almost imperceptible yet undeniable. Social media notifications were unusually persistent, buzzing incessantly on phones as news outlets began posting headlines that seemed almost too extraordinary to be real. Iraqi Dinar surges to new high. RV live on TV screens today, flashed across screens in bright, urgent letters. The world, or at least those invested in currencies and international finance, had been waiting for this moment for years, some for decades, and suddenly, it was no longer just speculation or rumor. The surge was happening, and it was happening right before everyone's eyes. In homes across Iraq and even internationally, people gathered around televisions, laptops, and tablets, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens showing news anchors struggling to contain their excitement. Some were seasoned investors who had studied the currency markets for years. Others were ordinary citizens who had held onto dinars for no other reason than hope and faith that one day, something monumental would occur. The air was electric, charged with anticipation, the kind of energy that could be felt collectively even through screens and phone calls. Families huddled together, whispering anxiously, eyes darting from one live update to another, hearts pounding with a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. Banks and financial institutions, having anticipated the magnitude of the event, were flooded with calls and inquiries. Customers wanted to know what the surge meant for their holdings, how they could exchange or utilize the newly valued currency, and what the potential limits and timelines might be. Phone lines were jammed, apps were crashing under the weight of thousands of simultaneous users checking balances, conversions, and exchange rates. News anchors repeatedly clarified the same point, emphasizing that this revaluation was officially confirmed and visible on live television, a historic moment that had been long awaited but was finally unfolding in real time. On social media, the reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Videos of news segments, live reactions from ordinary people, and screenshots of skyrocketing exchange rates began trending within minutes. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram were flooded with posts, hashtags like #DinarRV, #Iraqi Dinar, #Historic Surge, and #Currency Revaluation dominating feeds. People shared their excitement, their disbelief, their theories, and even their dreams for the future. Some posted memes to lighten the tension, while others uploaded heartfelt videos of families discussing how this change could alter their lives forever. The mix of humor, hope, and raw emotion created a sense of community, a collective experience shared by millions around the globe who were all suddenly part of a momentous event. In the midst of the chaos, some individuals were quietly overwhelmed with the implications of what they were witnessing. Years of holding onto dinars, often met with skepticism from friends and colleagues, were suddenly vindicated. The quiet whispers of doubt they had endured turned into murmurs of amazement and pride. They thought back to late nights analyzing charts, checking historical trends, and debating with online communities whether the revaluation would ever materialize. Now, with the numbers flashing on screens, it was as if the universe had suddenly acknowledged their patience and persistence. The surge wasn't just a number, it was validation, a tangible reward for enduring the long wait with faith and careful attention. Outside, the city seemed to vibrate with the energy of the news. People gathered around TV in shop windows, cafes, and offices, straining to see the live broadcasts. Conversations spilled into the streets, mixing with the normal sounds of daily life, the honking of cars, the laughter of children, and the rhythm of vendors calling out their wares. Yet underneath these familiar noises was a new layer of excitement, a buzz of anticipation that cut through the ordinary. Strangers exchanged glances, sometimes sharing knowing smiles, other times stopping mid-step to discuss what they were witnessing. The surge was no longer confined to the virtual space of social media or the professional space of banks. It had become a shared, tangible sensation experienced by people in every corner of community. For many, the impact was deeply personal. Parents whispered to children about the possibilities, imagining better futures, school opportunities, and even travel plans that had seemed unattainable just hours before. Young adults debated whether to invest further, diversify their portfolios, or perhaps start entrepreneurial ventures now that capital could be more readily available. The ripple effect extended beyond finance. It touched aspirations, dreams, and hopes that had been quietly building in people's hearts for years. The news wasn't just financial, it was emotional, psychological, and social, stirring a collective sense of possibility and opportunity. Financial analysts scrambled to interpret the numbers, speaking on live broadcasts with urgency and authority. Charts were drawn, graphs highlighted, and forecasts adjusted on the fly as new data rolled in. Commentators discussed the implications not only for Iraq but for the global market, considering currency correlations, geopolitical tensions, and potential shifts in trade balances. Analysts were acutely aware that while this surge could bring immense wealth to some, it could also destabilize certain sectors if not managed carefully. Yet despite the complexity, the overriding sentiment was excitement, an acknowledgement that history was being made in real time. Meanwhile, communities online and offline shared tips, experiences, and predictions. Forums and group chats were alive with advice, questions, and reflections, some humorous, some serious. People celebrated small wins, shared screenshots, and encouraged one another to stay informed. The emotional intensity was palpable, with some shedding tears of joy and others laughing out loud at the surreal reality of it all. Even skeptics found themselves captivated, unable to look away as the event unfolded with undeniable clarity. It was, in essence, a global spectacle, and everyone had a front-row seat. As the day progressed, it became clear that this was not a fleeting moment. The surge had a permanence, a realignment that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. News channels continued their coverage, interviews were conducted with citizens who had long anticipated this moment, and financial institutions began implementing updated procedures to accommodate the new valuation. But beyond the numbers and the technicalities, what stood out most was the human response, the mix of hope, relief, excitement, and empowerment that seemed to radiate from every individual experiencing it. For the holders of the Iraqi Dinar, for the investors, and for the global observers, the moment represented a convergence of patience, faith, and historical timing. By evening, the initial shock had evolved into a collective celebration. Social media feeds overflowed with reactions. Families sat together analyzing the day's developments, and communities discussed the potential next steps. The surge was more than a financial phenomenon. It was a moment of shared experience, a milestone that connected people across distances, cultures, and backgrounds. For many, it was the culmination of years of waiting, a tangible realization that something once considered distant or improbable had finally arrived. And through it all, the screens continued to glow, broadcasting the numbers, the confirmations, and the live reactions. The Iraqi dinar, once a quiet and largely overlooked currency, had taken center stage, commanding attention and respect. The morning had started like any other, but by the time the sun began to set, the world had been irrevocably changed, and history had been made in a way that was impossible to ignore. By midday, the initial shockwaves of the Iraqi dinar surge had settled into a frenzy of activity that spread far beyond newsrooms and trading floors. The financial world was in motion, but so was the world of ordinary citizens. Calls to banks were relentless, lines snaking out of branches as customers scrambled to understand what the surge truly meant for their savings and investments. App alerts blared incessantly, informing users of every minor fluctuation in real time. People stared at screens with wide eyes, trying to process numbers that, for many, had previously been abstract, distant, or even dismissed as unlikely. Each fluctuation seemed to carry the weight of possibility, sparking questions about what life could look like after such a dramatic rise in value. Within financial institutions, employees worked frantically to manage the surge. Tellers and advisors guided anxious customers through the steps of exchanging currency, checking balances, and interpreting live updates. IT departments struggled to keep online banking platforms from crashing under the unprecedented volume of simultaneous users. Analysts and consultants raced against the clock, updating forecasts and preparing statements to explain the sudden changes. Every office phone seemed to ring constantly, every email inbox overflowed, and every chat window pinged with urgent questions. Despite the chaos, there was a shared sense of pride among the staff. They were witnesses to a historic financial moment, participants in a story that would be told for years to come. Meanwhile, social media became a living, breathing ecosystem of reaction, speculation, and celebration. Videos of families reacting to the news went viral, capturing tears, laughter, and disbelief in equal measure. Influencers and amateur analysts dissected charts and trends, posting live commentary and predictions for what could come next. Hashtags flooded feeds, #Iraqi Dinar RV, #historic surge, #dinar boom, and #currency revaluation. Memes appeared that captured the humor and disbelief of ordinary people witnessing a life-altering event. Every post, share, and comment added another layer to the collective experience, amplifying the excitement and spreading awareness to even those who had not previously followed the dinar or its potential revaluation. In homes across the country and beyond, conversations turned serious, reflective, and intensely personal. Families gathered around televisions, phones, and laptops, whispering about what the surge meant for their futures. Parents speculated about educational opportunities, long, delayed purchases, and settling debts. Young adults debated investment strategies, wondering whether they should hold, trade, or diversify their portfolios. Even skeptics found themselves caught up in the moment, unable to ignore the tangible evidence that the dinar had risen dramatically in value. Questions about long-term implications, inflation, and global market reactions mingled with dreams of new possibilities, as the news became both a financial and emotional turning point. Communities online became hubs of information and support. Chat groups, forums, and social media threads filled with advice on how to navigate the surge, where to access reliable exchange services, and what strategies might maximize the benefits of revaluation. Some posts offered humor to lighten the tension, others shared detailed financial calculations and predictions. The online response mirrored the intensity of the offline world, creating a simultaneous global conversation where emotions, ideas, and reactions were exchanged at a rapid pace. This collective attention created an almost tangible energy, a sense that everyone, from seasoned investors to casual observers, was participating in something historic and unprecedented. Financial experts and analysts were at the center of this whirlwind, broadcasting explanations, warnings, and forecasts to a captivated audience. News anchors struggled to keep up with the speed of developments, constantly checking updates from banks, government officials, and market trackers. Live interviews with economists, investors, and even everyday citizens provided a mix of professional insight and personal reaction, painting a comprehensive picture of the impact. Analysts discussed the dinar's sudden rise in value relative to other currencies, considered geopolitical implications, and predicted potential shifts in trade balances. Despite the technical complexity, the overarching narrative was clear. This was an extraordinary moment, one that carried both opportunity and responsibility. People began thinking beyond their personal gains, considering the broader impact of the dinar surge on society. Conversations in cafes, workplaces, and public spaces frequently shifted to the potential for community growth, business expansion, and even philanthropic initiatives. Entrepreneurs speculated on starting new ventures, importing and exporting goods, and leveraging the financial boost for long-term sustainability. Families discussed how they might support each other and extended relatives. Even those previously indifferent to financial markets found themselves captivated, recognizing the far-reaching consequences of a currency revaluation occurring so dramatically and visibly. As news continued to break, the human element of the story became increasingly prominent. Videos circulated of individuals who had held onto dinars for decades, some in secrecy, some as part of a careful investment plan, now experiencing the realization of long-held hopes. Elderly citizens, once skeptical of modern finance, smiled with quiet satisfaction, reflecting on patience, timing, and faith. Young people marveled at the sudden opportunity for growth and independence. Each story added depth to the narrative, transforming the event from a simple financial phenomenon into a tapestry of human experience, emotion, and aspiration. By mid-afternoon, the excitement had reached a fever pitch. News anchors provided live updates of exchange rates, bank confirmations, and global reactions, while on the streets, people discussed strategies, shared tips, and celebrated small victories. The surge had shifted from a technical financial occurrence into a shared societal experience. Communities became intertwined in the unfolding event, both physically and virtually, as conversations spanned kitchens, living rooms, social media feeds, and professional offices. The sense of belonging to a historic moment brought people together in a way that transcended ordinary daily life. Across online platforms, discussions ranged from practical advice to speculative dreams. Some analyzed potential inflationary effects, interest rates, and trade implications, while others shared stories of how the revaluation could transform individual lives. Families considered buying homes, investing in education, or expanding businesses. Entrepreneurs explored new ventures and markets inspired by the unexpected influx of financial possibility. Every perspective, whether cautious or enthusiastic, contributed to a mosaic of collective anticipation, excitement, and cautious optimism. As evening approached, the initial frenzy began to evolve into focused action. Banks stabilized their systems, experts offered structured guidance, and communities began organizing plans for leveraging the surge responsibly. Yet the excitement did not dissipate, it simply matured. The dinar's rise had sparked both imagination and calculation, hope and strategy, creating a balance between celebration and prudence. People who had once wondered if their long-term patience would ever pay off now felt a mixture of relief and determination, eager to make informed decisions that could shape their futures positively. By nightfall, the impact of the day was undeniable. The surge was more than just a financial metric. It had become a narrative of patience rewarded, of historical significance, and of collective human experience. Families, investors, and communities alike reflected on the implications, sharing stories, insights, and emotions with one another. The world had witnessed a transformation, one that bridged the gap between numbers on a screen and real-life consequences, connecting individuals across geographies, backgrounds, and circumstances, in a shared sense of achievement, hope, and anticipation for what came next. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the energy surrounding the Iraqi Dinar surge showed no signs of fading. What started as breaking news in the morning had evolved into a full-blown societal phenomenon by evening. Streets, banks, and public spaces pulsed with excitement, a mixture of curiosity, celebration, and anticipation that seemed to ripple through every community. People who had spent decades quietly holding dinars watched in awe as the currency finally received the recognition they had long believed it deserved. Their patience, often questioned by friends or family, had culminated in this extraordinary moment, validating years of quiet hope and careful observation. In financial districts, employees were still processing the day's events, though the initial chaos had begun to settle into a rhythm of organized response. Advisors guided clients through steps to make the most of the surge, while banks implemented measures to handle the unprecedented demand for currency exchanges. The air inside these institutions was electric but measured, a controlled intensity that reflected both the gravity and excitement of the situation. Analysts discussed the broader implications, not only for individual investors but for the national economy and even the global financial landscape. They analyzed trends, projected future growth, and offered insights into potential risks. But the dominant feeling among all observers remained a sense of awe at witnessing history in real time. Outside the financial centers, ordinary citizens were equally swept up in the moment. Families gathered around shop windows, televisions, and personal devices, collectively reacting to updates and predictions. Conversations flowed freely in cafes, public squares, and homes, revolving around what the surge could mean for debt repayment, business opportunities, and long-deferred life goals. Young adults debated whether to reinvest, diversify holdings, or hold steady in anticipation of further gains. Children listened with wide eyes as parents spoke of possibilities that had once seemed distant or unattainable. The surge had transcended mere numbers. It had become a symbol of hope, a tangible representation of the potential for transformation. Social media continued to amplify the excitement, serving as a mirror for both individual and collective reactions. Videos capturing raw emotion, tears of joy, laughter, disbelief spread rapidly across platforms. Influencers and everyday users alike shared strategies, predictions, and reflections, creating an ongoing dialogue that connected people across neighborhoods, cities, and even continents. Hashtags trended persistently: #Dinar surge, #RV confirmed, #Iraqi Dinar historic, and #life-changing moment. The flood of information, emotion, and speculation created a dynamic ecosystem in which every participant became part of a larger, shared narrative. Within households, the personal impact was profound. Parents discussed new educational possibilities for their children, plans to pay off mortgages, or the chance to fund long-delayed medical treatments. Siblings debated whether to pool their holdings for joint investments or take separate paths, each weighing risk against potential reward. Conversations were layered with emotion, reflecting years of hope, patience, and sometimes anxiety about the uncertain future. Even those who had previously been indifferent to finance found themselves captivated, drawn into conversations that blended practical planning with the exhilaration of witnessing a historic moment. Communities online became a hub for collective strategy and reassurance. Chat groups, forums, and social media threads offered guidance, advice, and moral support as individuals navigated the implications of the dinar surge. Experienced investors shared their knowledge, while novices asked questions that prompted thoughtful responses and encouraged careful planning. Discussions ranged from detailed financial calculations to personal anecdotes, creating a rich tapestry of shared experience and expertise. The surge had become not only a financial milestone, but also a platform for education, connection, and collaboration. Across the nation, reactions were as diverse as the people experiencing them. Some celebrated quietly, savoring the moment privately, while others expressed their joy openly, gathering in groups or taking to the streets in spontaneous displays of enthusiasm. Interviews on live television captured a wide range of emotions. Elderly citizens expressed quiet satisfaction at seeing long-held faith rewarded. Young professionals marveled at the new opportunities, and families shared intimate conversations about how the surge could reshape their futures. Each reaction added depth and dimension to the story, demonstrating that the significance of the event extended far beyond currency charts and financial statements. As the day progressed, the emotional resonance of the surge became increasingly apparent. It wasn't merely a financial event, it was a cultural and social milestone. People reflected on what it meant to witness history unfolding in real time, how patience and perseverance had been rewarded, and how the collective experience had created a sense of unity across communities. Conversations shifted from speculation about numbers to reflection on personal growth, resilience, and hope. The dinar surge had become a symbol, a shared marker of possibility and achievement that resonated far beyond the confines of banking halls and trading floors. Entrepreneurs and business owners were among those most acutely affected. Some began planning expansions, leveraging the sudden boost in capital and public interest to pursue ventures that had previously seemed out of reach. Small businesses explored import-export opportunities, new product lines, and strategic partnerships, all fueled by the optimism generated by the dinar surge. Even larger corporations adjusted strategies, taking into account shifts in currency value, consumer purchasing power, and market sentiment. The surge had triggered a cascade of decisions and plans, all rooted in the newfound financial reality. Meanwhile, analysts continued to provide context and guidance, emphasizing both opportunity and caution. Discussions on live television and online platforms highlighted potential risks, from market volatility to inflationary pressures, while also underscoring the unprecedented nature of the event. Viewers, in turn, absorbed this information with keen interest, using it to make informed decisions, plan future investments, and discuss possibilities with family and friends. The interplay of expert insight and personal experience created a dynamic dialogue, blending technical knowledge with the lived reality of ordinary citizens navigating an extraordinary moment. By evening, the day's events had settled into a rhythm of reflection and celebration. Streets remained lively but calm, communities shared stories of reactions and experiences, and online platforms continued to buzz with updates, insights, and projections. Families and friends gathered to discuss what the surge might mean for their futures, from paying off debts to pursuing educational and professional goals. The dinar's rise had become more than a financial metric. It was a narrative of hope, opportunity, and human resilience, connecting people across distances, backgrounds, and circumstances. As night fell, the collective realization took hold. This was not just a fleeting moment, but a historical milestone. The surge represented years of anticipation, patient investment, and persistent hope, culminating in a tangible transformation of individual and collective possibilities. Citizens reflected on the journey, from early skepticism to cautious optimism to full-fledged excitement, recognizing that the dinar's new value had altered the course of many lives. Conversations, both online and offline, centered on practical next steps, but also on the emotions and stories that had emerged throughout the day. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere was one of profound recognition. The Iraqi dinar, once overlooked by many, had achieved a prominence and value that resonated on a global stage. Those who had invested, hoped, or simply watched were connected by a shared experience that transcended ordinary life. The surge was no longer simply a financial occurrence. It was a social, cultural, and emotional phenomenon, leaving a mark on everyone who witnessed it. People went to bed that night not just with plans and strategies, but with a sense of participation in history, pride in patience rewarded, and hope for what the future could now bring. The day had begun with a news alert, evolved into global excitement, and concluded with reflection, connection, and possibility. The dinar surge had altered more than numbers on a screen. It had altered perspectives, expectations, and dreams. It was a moment that would be remembered, recounted, and celebrated for years to come, not just as a currency revaluation, but as a milestone that touched lives in profound and lasting ways.